The world is on fire. I'm not referring to environmental degradation or global warming here. No, although that too is true. I refer to protests, not just all across the United States, but all around the world.
We talked to some witnesses today who said that the officers went and put on plastic gloves and picked up their shell casings after they killed them, before rendering aid.
But they're killing black people in the pandemic. So now we all out here with our mask on, hoping we don't get the coronavirus. That's how it is to be black in America.
From Pacifica Radio, this is COVID, Race, and Democracy. I'm Verna Avery Brown. A new breakthrough drug for COVID victims. The attorney for Rayshard Brooks says they didn't have to shoot. And one comedian says this is not a laughing matter. But first, these new headlines. A breakthrough in treatments for the coronavirus, giving low dosage of the generic steroid drug dexamethasone to patients admitted to the hospital with COVID-19 reduced death rates by around a third among those with the most severe cases of infection. That's according to trial data showed today. Researchers say the results described a major breakthrough by scientists leading the UK-led clinical trial known as Recovery, and suggest the drug should immediately become standard care in patients treated in the hospital with the pandemic disease. Protests against police brutality in the U.S. remained mostly peaceful Monday night, though demonstrations in 3 states ended in chaos with a shooting, arrest, and the closure of one city's downtown. Vigilantes may have instigated violence that led to a shooting in New Mexico as a demonstration called for the removal of a sculpture of a Spanish conquistador, officials said. The police chief said he believes vigilante groups may have spurred the violence. 2 black men have been found hanging on trees in California. Federal authorities will review local investigations in 2 separate hangings of black men in Southern California that were suspected suicides and have drawn scrutiny amid growing calls to rein in police misconduct and racial injustice. Authorities in Palmdale and Victorville said no foul play was suspected in the deaths of Robert Fuller and Malcolm Harsh, prompting accusations from loved ones and surrounding communities of a rush to judgment. Sheriff's officials are investigating both cases, but early determinations of suicide triggered protests over the weekend. President Trump's advisors are plotting a political turnaround centered on his stewardship of the economy, seeking to exploit a rare bright spot in the polls against Joe Biden and vowing to usher in the great American comeback after the country plunged into a financial freefall on his watch. Biden, under growing pressure from Democratic allies to wage a more aggressive rebuttal, plans to sharpen his economic focus in coming weeks with the rollout of new proposals to stimulate job creation. That's according to a senior campaign advisor. The campaign also plans to intensify its drive to remind voters of Trump's sluggish response to the coronavirus and the unemployment spike that followed. Those are today's headlines. President Trump is expected to sign an executive order today that will essentially pay cops to be good. The exact language is to, quote, incentivize police departments to use modernized best practices. And while it's unclear exactly how the executive order will be executed, senior administration officials told reporters that departments that follow the 3 guidelines and have certification will be favored for discretionary grants. The order is also expected to increase information sharing by tracking cops who have excessive use of force complaints and to address mental health, homelessness, and addiction. Police tactics have come under intense scrutiny in the wake of the brutal murder of George Floyd by Minneapolis former officer Derek Chauvin that triggered worldwide outrage and protests. Law enforcement tactics ranging from chokeholds to tear gassing to rubber bullets to using mounted officers to part protesters in a crowd are being challenged in lawsuits across the country. In an upper-middle-class neighborhood in Washington, D.C., officers used a technique known as kettling on peaceful protesters, most of whom were on their way home.